All right, so now, can you hear me, Fred? Can you guys hear me? Check one, two. Turn it up and see if you're getting audio. It's all right. Because that's also, yeah, it looks like it's working. Test one, two.
Check. That works.
Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, test. Test, test, test. Yep. I'm glad you can do that too.
that?
It was, well, it was
Now we're back. So just so we know, the fix was to just turn it off and back on again.
That's what we do with our computers.
Isn't that
Reboot
fun? Everybody ready?
We here.
Speak, boy.
Speak,
You're good.
speak.
All right. We will call to order the April 8th regular meeting of the Signal Mountain Town Council. I guess they're all regular meetings now since we're doing them in the evening. We'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll follow that with a moment of silence.
Legend.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That moment of silence is the best part of the meeting. Carol, will you take roll call?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak is not here. Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here?
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch is not here. Councilmember Robert Spalding.
Here.
Mayor Dan Lander.
Here. So next we have approval of minutes. If you haven't read them over, take a moment and look at them. I have no comments. If anyone else has comments, go ahead. You good? Motion to approve minutes?
So moved. Second.
Can go either way, Carol.
Got it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. It carries 3-0. Citizens' opportunity to address the council. Hey, Amy. Anyone like to address the council?
Is this on?
Is the red light on? Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if this,
You have to state your name and address.
David Spiller, 307 James Boulevard. I exchanged some messages with you, Dan, over the weekend. I just wanted to report out to the council some frustrations about what's been going on James Boulevard in connection with the construction. In particular, on Friday, we got a message from the postmaster in our mailbox saying that we would no longer receive our mail due to a dangerous situation for the carriers. No warning. My neighbor and I, we tried to contact the postmaster. He was successful. I was not. My call was not returned. We spoke with Loretta of the town, who expressed that this was a surprise to the town. I also learned that the town had nobody in the public works had ever spoken with the postman or postmaster about delivery of our mail. To be a citizen and to hear there's something dangerous going on makes me wonder, is it dangerous for my children to be walking to the bus stop and whatnot? I guess I would like to say it was also astounding to hear that the Public Works Department had never once spoken with the postmaster to ensure that our mail would be delivered from when construction started in, I guess, October, I think.
Had the mail been delivered all that time until this past weekend?
Yes, it's been delivered somewhat inconsistently. Sometimes it's been delivered to our door, paper mail and packages. Sometimes it's been delivered to our boxes. Access to the box is difficult because it's overhanging into the road that's being worked on. But it's been delivered, including boxes. Now, I understand it was delivered today. I haven't been to my home, but I understand it has been delivered today. But I would like to say, of the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 houses that are affected, mine's included, we were never notified when construction started or when it would start. It just did. We were never notified why it stopped for like 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. only after repeated calls to Public Works did we get any kind of explanation that there was this situation caused by the repeated rains, which resulted in inability to construct as it had been planned, and an alternative plan had to be obtained and then approved by the state and whatnot. So everything seems quite reactive and not proactive. I would like, I guess, the town and you all as people, the town council, to encourage and get the Public Works Department to get regular communication with us about what's happening, when it will happen, and when it will be over. For instance, I was told on Friday that this week we would be not allowed to get into our driveways at all at any point, and that would start at some point so that concrete could be laid, finally.
How did you get that message?
After I called Loretta and complained about the fact that we weren't getting our mail, or were told we weren't going to get our mail, and she mentioned that as an aside. Now I expressed, what you're saying is that my family and I will not be able to access our driveway or really park near our home. We'll have to park 100-something yards away for a number of days in a row. You know, we have small children. We need to make a big grocery haul before that and do other types of things so that we're not, you know, constantly walking back and forth in the rain and at all hours. And any kind of notification ahead of that would be appreciated. Again, it took sort of a complaint about something else to even get notice that that was happening. And it was possibly happening today. So I heard that on Friday afternoon. It did not happen today because it rained. And so I don't know that it will happen. Maybe not until Wednesday. But so, I mean, I just would like to say on the mail situation, I think the town should be coordinating with the postman about delivery of our mail and packages and coordinating with FedEx or UPS or whoever. That's should be just understood and done and handled by the town. I don't know why it wouldn't be. The message a little bit was, well, those are services other parties deliver to you. But, I mean, we're not in charge of the construction. We don't have the details. We're not the people who are doing it. The town's doing it. I don't know what changed over one day to the next, why the postmaster felt it was fine to deliver the mail, and then the next day said it was unsafe condition for the carriers. But I would submit to the town that word thrown about to residents is concerning, and I don't exactly understand what's unsafe about it. If it is unsafe for the carriers, it's unsafe for my family, I suppose, to be walking around there and for others to be walking around there. I don't think that's happening, but if there is a safety concern, what is it and how is it going to be addressed? So that's a question. Whenever we're put out of our driveways and effectively out of accessing our home easily, especially with weather, you know, up and down like it is, we need advance notice, not just the morning of. In 10 minutes, you need to leave your driveway, which is what happens, right? That's how it's happened thus far. We need multiple days advance notice so we can prepare for that, especially if we're going to be out for days and days at a time. And I would submit, we have received 2 written notices thus far in 6 months from the Public Works Department about the status of things. We should be getting a weekly notice. Email, it doesn't matter how it's communicated, but we should get something as the residents who are affected, who are pretty heavily affected by this.
Sure.
We should be getting some sort of notice on a weekly basis, even if it's nothing new to report, but that notice should include what's happening, what's planned to happen, and when is the end date, and when is the end date, you know, is it moving, is it
Sure.
whatever? Because, you know, every time we talk to somebody, it's always 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks till something happens, and then nothing happens.
Right. So thank you for taking time to do this. And I know it's a hassle, as I, you know,
Yep.
told you when we wrote the other day. We, you can't know everything, and the mail was working fine. And I don't want to get into a back and forth about what could have happened, but I think we can do a better job, and it's one of the things we've talked about as far as communicating that stuff on a regular basis. If we get to the place where we're using our email blast on a regular basis and the website is updated, I want to ask you this as a citizen. If you knew that you could go to a spot on the site to see what's up with that construction project, would you consider that to be adequate?
Yeah, I mean, that would serve as notice of regularly updated
That's one of the
site.
things that we're
Yeah.
trying to get set up. We're redesigning the website, and so I agree that we should communicate that kind of thing better. I don't necessarily agree that we can know everything and that Loretta can get the post office to tell her, or that decision doesn't get made on the street in the moment, by a postman, and then it doesn't filter back up, because the postmaster's probably not gonna call the town.
They did not, as far
They
as I know.
didn't, and so your reporting was good. I mean, that's a good thing to let us know, so.
Yes, I'm mainly distressed that, not distressed, but it was mainly concerned that it had never, seemingly had never been a thought of what should we do to ensure that the mail's delivered? That this is, oh, okay, the postmaster has identified some problem, well, we'll go figure it out. That's great, and let's figure it out, and I'm thankful
And
to the
and
town.
Loretta
for-
did jump on that, right?
Yes, it sounds like that, and that's great. But let's stay proactive about it, not reactive,
Sure.
right? As things change on the ground, I would think the town will now be in regular communication with I would hope and think the town would now be in regular communication with the postmaster about ensuring that our mail's delivered. I mean, I'm not saying every day, but,
Right.
if something changes in 3 weeks, okay, postmaster, here's what's gonna change, just wanna make sure, everybody's gonna get their mail.
Communication's good all the way around.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to
All right.
to
Thank you.
suggest. Okay, anything
Appreciate you
else?
doing that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Along with that, what is the status right now on the project? In other words, the last I remember is that there was gonna be a penalty if it wasn't finished before the centennial. Where has it gone from since that piece of information?
If you're gonna talk, Loretta, come up to the mic. Sorry, you'll be next.
As far as the deadline goes, they've submitted a letter saying how many rain days they've had, which has been numerous, and we were pretty much out of commission of doing anything for at least a month. And so they have sent me a letter saying that we were unable to work due to the weather for a certain amount of time. I would like to say that since the middle of January, I've sent out 4 update letters to the residents on the street. Typically, and again, furthermore, when the post office cannot deliver mail, they will typically let us know, and then we go out and take care of it. As soon as I found out Friday that they had gotten those letters, I called the postmaster, spoke with him. We made temporary mailboxes today, and they're out on the road. So I asked him to please do not stop delivering mail. Let us fix this, and we did.
Good.
So, and that's the way they typically operate. If they can't, deliver mail, they call us, and then we will go out and respond to that. But the project is delayed because of all the rain that we had, earlier. I called everybody on the street on Friday and talked to them about the driveways, that they probably are gonna start pouring concrete for the road on Wednesday. It might be Thursday now due to the rain. We still have to proof roll the base and make sure that's in good shape. So Charlie Hutchison is the foreman out there. He went door to door and told people about their driveways. And then I made phone calls to everybody on the street Friday also to tell them that we were hoping to start the road concrete on Wednesday, but I think it's gonna be Thursday now. But once we do that, we are really making good strides now that we've had good weather. So, I don't know what the deadline date, completion date is gonna be at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Reach some stuff we can't know. Thanks for that.
And it is common practice to, weather is something that nobody has any control over. If it was a delay, that it can be attributed to the contractor, then we have, avenues that we can pursue there, but there's simply, there's so much rain, and that's why we changed the base process and all that to get things moving, but There's really not much we can do about them being delayed that much for weather.
What is a temporary mailbox? What does that consist of?
We just took some posts and some mailboxes and put them on some 4x4s, or sometimes we put them in a 5-gallon bucket of concrete, we set them on the road with the number on it, and the postman can deliver their mail as normal.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It's important to note that this past year, it was the wettest year in the history of the Tennessee Valley. I was just in a meeting today, a mayor's meeting, and they talked about the weather-related problems all across this area. It was the wettest we've had. I mean, so it's pretty extraordinary circumstances that it shut down pouring of concrete, which tends to like water. But I think the problem there was more complicated than that the ground would just never dry enough. So, next. State your name and your address, and try to keep it to 3 minutes. That's what the general rule is.
Fred Edgman, and I live at 309 James. I'm not going to, I understand the weather conditions and all that stuff, but I think there's been some other things. I do not feel like the town has been out there. As he stated, everything's been reactive. One day I tried to pull in my driveway, and I have a normal-sized vehicle. I couldn't even I had to pull to the end of the street because the actual metal tile was 8 feet wide. So to make a hard 90-degree turn into an 8 feet wide with a ditch on either side is mind-blowing.
Did you notify Public Works?
Yes, I did the next day.
And did Loretta respond to the contractors?
I think they had the gentleman fix it.
Yeah, but that's, reactive is sometimes
I think where I'm,
you
I
guys,
think,
we're all in the same town
Right.
together, and so your eyes tell us what's happening.
and I think what's frustrating to the people on our street is we're the ones out there constantly letting y'all know, instead of a representative from the town out there double checking to say, hey, they can get in their driveway. My next door neighbor, she ran over a cone once again, ran over a cone, drug it to work, had to go to the mechanic shop to get the cone from under her car. So it's just been a constant, I think initially when you all were redoing something with the soils, readjusting it or whatever the process, I called up there and I said, well, where do we need to park? Well, we don't know. Just, park over here, park over there. I just don't, I feel like everything's just been kind of, I understand what's going on, and it's going to be great when it's done. But I think in the meantime, it'd be nice to have, I feel like someone on our side double checking to make sure stuff's done right. Instead of us being the first line of defense, kind of like, hey, I can't get in my driveway. I mean, for example, I have a small boat, and I have not been able to get it out of my driveway for the last 6 months, just due to the, it's just.
Couldn't you see that if something happens at 4 o'clock and the workers who are contractors
Right.
that are doing that do something at 4, that the odds of our knowing that by 4:15 it's just
Right.
not possible. And the odds of your seeing it when you pull
Right.
home are 100%.
Right.
And so, it's appreciated when you let us know.
Right, and I think I understand, like I say, you can't tell what's day to day is a new,
Right.
I understand that, but it's just, feel like it's just constantly, we're just calling, hey, what about this? What about this is going on? And it's just, at some point, you kind of, that's why we're here to speak up,
Yeah, and
So-
it's good that you are, and I know the frustration level's high.
So-
We would all like for it to be done as well, if everything gets better.
So I think that's all we're wanting, is just for the town, just to kind of
Sure.
double check, because you are our representation.
Right.
The contractors don't work for me, they're working for the town.
Right.
So, but thank you.
And we work for you. That's the. Anyone else? William, are you going to speak? All right, so we'll close citizens' opportunity. I don't think I had to hit that, but I did. Next is a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with the Signal Mountain Lions Club of Signal Mountain, Tennessee, in the amount of $10,000 to provide events during the 4th of July celebration to improve the civic, cultural, social, and moral welfare of the community.
Make a motion.
How much guidance are they going to get, Boyd? on that?
Guidance.
Is this mostly fireworks?
This is fireworks.
This is fireworks?
Yeah.
Is that, how does that help
For
our
the
morals?
4th of July event. If you look at
We've done it
the
every year.
agreement, just to revisit, when we determined that we had to do these agreements and we had not in the past.
Right.
So during that year, we got all that worked out. That was the last year we had budgeted $2,700. And when it was all said and done, because of this process, we didn't make that. This year, we did a budget amendment, put that back in so we could catch that up. Then, a couple of years ago, we changed our contribution to $4,000. And this year, decided to combine the Centennial Celebration fireworks with the 4th of July fireworks. And in looking at that budget, I figured around $3,300 is what we could do in addition. So there's kind of three things we're doing with this particular agreement. The year we missed, our regular $4,000 contribution, and then an additional $3,300 for this year. Item 2 on the agreement states, funds so provided shall be used to provide a fireworks display during the July 4th celebration events provided by the Lions Club.
All right, any other discussion?
You're gonna do it at the soccer fields?
It'll look like it.
Okay.
Now that's where it'll be.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, carries 4-0. All right, now we move on to ordinances. That's fine. All right, this will be the first reading of an, excuse me, of an ordinance amending section 18-107 of the Town Code to establish new rate schedule, water rates and fees for the town of Signal Mountain Water Utility beginning July 1st, 2019. And so I suspect we should probably just talk about this with clarification for what it is.
If I might, as a lead-in, Susanna contacted me today and had a conflict, but she specifically asked that I convey her wish that her absence not hold up this vote moving forward.
So we've talked about this. I'm sure everybody's had a chance. I mean, we're going with the MTAS recommendation, which is also a verification of the recommendation that Boyd had in the water presentation a couple of years back. So there's been a lot of study that's gone into it. Following it on social media, I agree. I was surprised no one spoke tonight about not wanting their water rate to go up, but I think what would happen is everyone in this room would agree none of us want our water rates to go up. But in order to properly maintain the water system and do the repairs that need to be done, this is what has to happen. And some of the discussion about rates, it's interesting that for many people, their water rates will actually go down with this. For those who might be impacted the most, single people, their rate will almost for sure see their water rates go down. I think there's also been some confusion, just to talk about it, that when our water rates go up 15%, if you're one of those whose rate goes up exactly 15%, that does not increase your WWTA sewage bill, because that's based on the amount of water used, not what you paid for the amount of water. So, do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? I'll second it. Discussion?
Does this include this increase? Does it outline salaries? William, you're retiring when?
Probably sometime next year.
And then who is slated to, at this time, your thoughts on replacing that? Are those built into this increase?
This rate is set to accommodate the salaries that we gave them to use as guidance. So it is accounted for in these rates.
Now, does that include going forward as far as what that role would be replaced with when William retires? In other words, is it going to be a water engineer? Is it going to be somebody who is at a different level than William is, or what those cost increases?
That rate is set, or what the council agreed for them to use to set these rates has been determined. Who will be in that position ultimately will be a decision for me, frankly.
Now, is there any, in going from a 4,000 minimum to a 1,000, for those people who get improvement in their rates, how does that balance out? Is there like a chart that shows if we keep the 4,000 minimum versus a 1,000 X amount per thousand? Is it $6 or $5 or what is it?
Basically, MTAS took our current rate structure and applied the 15% increases to that. Then they converted that rate structure to the recommended rate structure, so that there's a base rate, I believe it's $6, and then you pay only for the water that you use. So there's actually not a 1,000 gallon minimum. There is no minimum. So you only pay for the water you use. So again, single folks, an elderly couple, folks in that situation similar to that, instead of paying a minimum and not using the requisite gallons associated with it, then they're only going to pay for the water they use. And that applies to everybody. So the higher volume users will pay a larger
So a
rate.
single user who uses 1,000 gallons will pay $11.80. And right now, I think it's $20.18. Am I remember that right?
Right, I think that's right.
What's that? 2020, yeah.
Well, there's no doubt that the water rates have to go up. I'm just wondering if this is enough to address. I know you're doing it in the graduated amounts. My concern is it enough? And
Why do you have that concern? What numbers are you doubting?
well, again, when going forward with all the things that MTAS had suggested that we were deficient in, will these rates meet those amounts?
Yeah, we
And-
gave them not only the wage schedule that we anticipate, but also the capital project schedule that we took from the Arcata study. So we gave them a 5-year outlook with considerable specificity, and then projected that we would continue that type of capital investment for some years to come. So that's all been included in this rate recommendation.
Does this also include the new meter system?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the amount for that?
Estimate on that right now is around 600,000 for meters and upgrading the SCADA system.
Because I remember this discussion 4 years ago when we were talking about getting that system, and it seems like everything evolved from that concern as far as why didn't we purchase it back then versus looking at RFP and looking at sale and looking at someone else absorbing that cost. So anyway, those are just my questions. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion?
I just want to clarify, and this may sound silly. So these rate increases would happen regardless whether we retained the system or sold the system? Would they be this high? Like, I feel like this is only based on if we didn't sell the water system. Am I
This-
correct in that?
This particular rate, yes, is based on if we keep is based on keeping the water system.
Okay.
is the is the
So
right
we're
way to say it.
voting on a rate that only has to do with us keeping the water system, but yet we haven't voted on whether or not we're keeping it?
That's correct. But this is the first reading, and we've tried to do that, but we haven't had a full council yet.
And this rate also won't go into effect until July 1st. So basically what moving forward with this will do is allow us to move forward with some budget processes.
Do we agree as a council, though, before this is the first reading, so we need a second?
Correct.
Before we do that, we need to make a decision on whether or not we're even keeping the water system.
Yeah, I think that yes.
I mean, I'm open for discussion. I mean, it just seems
I think we need to close that item out. And that item, if we're choosing to keep the water system, we need to say directly that we are choosing to keep our water system and rejecting the bids. From the
Yeah, because it
RFP.
kind of seems like we're doing this, like, a little
Well,
kind of,
Well, it's because we haven't had a
backdooring
full
it.
council. We've tried to do this.
Right.
I mean, which is okay, but we haven't had everyone
Sure.
here. And we don't have everyone here tonight, so I still feel that discussion should have a full council. But this, we can move forward with no consequence to that discussion.
I was just
And we can have
clarifying.
that discussion, but that's separate from this. We can do that tonight if we want to still. Yeah.
well, I don't think it really makes sense if we don't have a full council. I'm with you on that. I was just clarifying.
All right, any other discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries 4-0 on first reading. All right, next we have discussion items. And the first one is the council budget meeting schedule. And we had, since we're not meeting on Friday, since our meetings are on Monday evenings now, Boyd and I were talking about an option of, perhaps we don't have one Monday night meeting, since we're going to have the Friday budget meeting, which would normally be that. Or these meetings have also been they've been shorter. I mean, we could still have the Monday meeting. We're getting done in less than an hour most of the time. So we could just keep this regular schedule just to keep that consistency. So that's the discussion. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that was really our question. We had decided to set the budget meeting for the 26th on the Friday.
I will be out of town.
Yeah, I think we set that. But the
When did we do
question,
Months ago.
But did I not tell you that I was going to be out of town?
I mean, I think we discussed that then, during that meeting. So,
Can you look that up? Because I don't remember that
No,
discussion.
I'm afraid to bail out of
Okay.
this.
but as part of the discussion, if that needs to be
Yeah.
rescheduled, we can do that. The question was, because originally we were told the 26th would be the budget meeting, but it was never really determined, or we weren't clear if that was in addition to the 22nd or instead of the 22nd. So that's what we were trying to nail down. If the 22nd or the 26th is an issue, then this gives us the opportunity to address that.
Right. Is it possible that we could do it on a Saturday?
No. I cannot do it on a Saturday. But I can do it any day but the 26th. I've already cleared it with my work. I told them I'd give them the date this evening, after this meeting. So I'm open to any day except the 25th and 26th because I will be in Indianapolis.
I'm just
And
going
I
to go ahead and
can't
make
change
an
that.
announcement. On July 15th of this year, I'm going to be terminating my post here. So I'm going to give you time to find somebody to do that. I've got to be involved in a lot of other things. And so as far as meeting some of those dates, I'm going to be lucky just to make some of these meetings here. so much less any other additional budgetary meetings. So I just let you weigh in on that.
So, okay. So you might not be here the 26th also.
Correct.
So that would leave us, that's down to 3. And we need as many people as we can have at the budget meetings. So what about, I said the 25th, what about the 24th? If
Is that a Wednesday?
that's a Wednesday, could you make an all-day Wednesday
I'm
meeting?
good then.
I can.
Would you mind checking with Susanna to see if that's possible? And does that fit with your schedule, where you guys will be? That pushes it, doesn't it? Would it be better next week?
I'm
I,
looking
you know,
at it
I
too.
really hesitate to say this, but 3 of us here will be modeling at the Dogwood Luncheon that day.
Well, at least we'll look nice.
You got me into this, so I'm gonna embarrass you with that one.
That's true. Well, would it be better if we pushed it into next week, sir?
For some reason, Lloyd, I have on my calendar May the 3rd, Friday the 3rd as an alternative budget.
I was just mentioning that, Sam and I both have it, it's May 3rd on our calendar. I don't know.
See, I told you. I knew I told you guys about the 26th.
What do you have, sir?
I don't have anything on that date, so
May 3rd? What day of the week is that? Is that a Friday again?
That is a Friday. I can do May 3rd. I can do May 2nd. I can do May 1st. I can do April 30th. Just can't do the 26th.
Just can't do that one. Is that okay? Does that push you guys too much time-wise? May 3rd works for me as well.
yeah, that's good.
All right.
I think it was 10 days till the first meeting in May.
I have it on my calendar as budget meeting.
Well, there you go.
Okay, I'm not crazy. I started to question
That's
myself.
still up in the air.
So does she.
All right. Is that what you have too? All right.
So that being the case,
Terrible.
we've answered both questions. We're moving, it's gonna be May 3rd, and then we will need to have both of the Monday meetings that month,
Yeah.
if at all possible.
Right. So no changes except for we're going to go with the date that Amy said we should have done to begin with, which was,
Yeah,
I knew
which
it.
was the
I
right
knew it.
date as anyway.
I could have been wrong though, I promise.
Okay,
I got
yeah.
terrible
I just
calendar.
go with what staff tells me because they never make mistakes.
So we're gonna keep the budget meeting on the 3rd, and then we have a meeting on the 30th as well? Did I hear that right? Or the 29th?
Yeah.
Oh, so then we have,
22nd, and then May 13th
okay,
and
perfect.
27th.
All
And
right.
that keeps us from having 2 meetings in 1 week.
Great.
Great.
You're a genius.
All in favor?
Okay, so,
This is why we wanna talk about this.
yeah. I know we aren't too tentative agenda, but can we just go ahead and put tentative agenda? We've got to talk about Bob's replacement for the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Just to cue that up. All right, next discussion for this is administrative hearing officer ordinance and short-term rentals. Bring us up to date on that, Boyd.
I'm gonna defer to Harry on most of this. We have, just in a nutshell, we have an ordinance pretty much prepared to deal with short-term rentals. There are actually 2 ordinances, one for general code and one for zoning. Pose the question to Harry about one section that relates to the amount of a fine that we could set. And that got us into the discussion about administrative hearing officer and perhaps some updates we need to do there for that code. And with that, I will let him explain.
All right, the administrative hearing officer code provision, well, in 2017, the Tennessee legislature amended state law to add an additional power that an administrative hearing officer can hear. Used to be essentially just code violations. In 2017, they amended the statute to say that an administrative hearing officer can also hear any local zoning ordinance violations. So if the if Signal Mountain is going to pass a short-term vacation rental addition to its zoning ordinance, I think it would be a good idea to amend the Signal Mountain Administrative Hearing Officer provision to give him the power to hear those violations of that short-term vacation rental.
Him who?
Administrative hearing officer currently is Charlie Poss.
It is.
How did that, when did that
He's,
happen?
yeah, so that's, is that something that is voted on by council? Is that something that's
Clearly
in
not.
addition to planning commission?
He was appointed by council, and we have never had a need for him to hear a case,
Okay.
but he is
How
retained.
long has he been in that position?
Probably 4 or 5 years,
That's why we didn't know.
Yeah. Okay.
and that's just a stab off the top of my head, but
Do you want to draw up wording for us to do that by resolution?
there will be an ordinance to change the administrative hearing officer ordinance. And then, at the same time, assuming that passes, we could pass then the short-term rental ordinances. The key is that an administrative hearing officer can fine up to $500. Otherwise, under general municipal code, we can only fine $50.
Okay.
So that's the main.
This is to give us teeth in the short-term
Right.
rental
Yeah.
thing, yeah, in case there's a problem.
So just ahead of bringing that to you, just wanted to kind of lay that out and explain it, and hopefully for the next meeting.
And
we
let
can
us
have-
know we have an administrative hearing officer that had never heard of
That's
that.
never heard anything yet,
Right.
but might.
Any other discussion on that?
Were these drafted, you drafted these, or this was state drafted? Or?
These were drafted apparently last year.
Just planning commission.
Yeah, they were drafted last year, and I think they were not passed because by the time they got through drafting them, it was close to election time, and the thinking was that the new council ought to look at it and discuss it.
So, anything to do with the Airbnb, is that what this is pertaining to?
Correct.
And we haven't, we really haven't done a presentation at council on that since we discussed it at planning commission. It just, so we can plan on doing that, Bob, so there's more information about that, yeah. And a lot of what we had to do with what we learned about the state laws about Airbnbs.
Right.
And it was,
We're somewhat limited in what we can do and how we can do it, so that was, as much as anything, the trick was crafting this to not be outside state statute. Bless you.
all right, so we can plan that as we come to that, so the whole package comes up. All right, if there's no further discussion on that, we'll move to the last item of the discussion. It's sidewalk and bike ped grant projects. Is Loretta going to give us an update, or are you doing that?
If she can come up, I'm gonna need some help in, hopefully with some detail. As you know, we applied for and received grants, one for what we call Town Hall Sidewalk Project, and one for the Taft Highway Bike Ped Path. Through both of those processes, we worked with engineers, we met with folks from TDOT, and worked toward getting as good a cost estimate as possible on those projects. We got a call a couple of weeks ago, or an email from the state that said, and what we had asked to do was, TDOT has an approved list of engineers, so that we wouldn't have to go through an RFQ process and get them qualified. Basically, if you use these folks, they're approved TDOT project engineers. So we told them we wanted to do that, so then they send the project to them for review. And then it came back and said, there's nowhere near enough money in these projects, which, in speaking with TDOT, they're seeing that across the board, every project, just like every other project we've done. If you're building something, cost is going through the roof. So they called, we had a conference call with them, and they suggested rolling those two budgets together to do the bike ped. But then when Loretta talked to the engineer directly, he's saying there's not even enough funds for that. One of the problems that we're seeing is in these grant projects, because of the requirements, NEPA and the specific design requirements and everything, that is driving the price up as much as anything else. It's materials are more expensive, everything's more expensive, but these projects specifically are more expensive because of the requirements that come with using state and federal money.
Because the contractor's dealing with
Because
the
of
requirements.
so, and basically, we're in a position that the additional funds that would be required to do these two projects is just astronomical. We're at a point that we've never really considered before, to really consider saying thanks but no thanks. Along this process, we've also began to worry about the Old Town Sidewalk project.
That was my next question.
Which is another similar. They've offered to let us roll these two projects together. So now we're asking if we can hold these funds in anticipation of issues there, so that we have all these projects would be allowable under that type of grant, so we should be able to roll them together. So we're trying to figure out how to manage this, but and they're saying it's not unusual. We thought it was kind of funny until we realized we were one of them, that they're seeing cost 300% from original.
Yeah, and I know you can't give a solid answer to this, but if we knew that it was going to cost, I'm just making up a number, $100,000, which I know is more than that, to do the Old Town sidewalks, and if we grant it, we could get $50,000 of that, but it would take 3 years and probably actually end up costing $250,000. Would we be better off as a town to say, let's replace the sidewalks for a cost of $100,000 and just do it?
That's the point we're really getting to now, because of the again, we understand that material costs, all of that stuff's going up. We've seen that, we know that. But in these projects, we think it's as much to do with the fact that it's just a grant project.
Yeah, well, it's also the frustration you guys have had. This thing wouldn't have been like this. This was a granted project also, the James Boulevard thing, and that's one of the reasons it's been such a nightmare. Is because we have very little control with these things, and there's so many signatures that have to sign off on them.
And we're in a position now where we have dealt with those with James Boulevard, the Shoal Creek Bridge project, and others where we've found ourselves in this situation, not this dramatically, but we've gotten so far along on these projects that we said, okay, we'll front the additional money. We've come this far, we've got to see it through. And that's why we wanted to have this discussion right now before we got too far down the road.
Yeah.
So,
Well, could we plan a work session where we talk about just sidewalks and get very granular on the numbers and on these projects, so that, because there have been so many numbers, so many moving parts, that it's like we might be starting from scratch again.
do you have the figures, specific figures on these two projects, and then what they estimate?
Yeah, we had, what our portion, it's an 80-20.
Right.
So the portion we were gonna get from, TDOT, their contribution on the bike ped path was around a little over 390,000.
So just to be clear, it's 80 hours or 80 theirs?
80
They
theirs.
pay 80, we pay
Theirs,
20.
so
So
they are
their
80.
80% contribution on the bike ped was around a little over 390,000. And then on the town hall sidewalk, that's a TAP grant, and it's only for construction only. they don't fund any of the NEPA, the design, or anything like that. So we would have to cover that cost 100% anyway on the TAP grant. But what their contribution, their 80% for the construction was around 282,000.
Would you, the initial NEPA, what does NEPA stand for?
Oh, shoot, we just talked about that the other day. It's the
It's the
environmental,
National Environmental Protection Act, or
it's
Something
something
along those
close to that. It's our environmental process, but it involves a lot of entities such as State Historic Preservation Office, North American Indian Council, you know, air pollution, water pollution. It's a gamut that you have to get approvals from for our NEPA. And I thought we were there about a month ago on the town hall sidewalks. They sent it back for one more thing, so they get another 30 days to look, to review it. And so, next
And-
month, it will have been in NEPA review for a year for town hall sidewalks.
no, Old Town sidewalk.
I mean,
Old Town,
Old Town
yeah.
sidewalks, sorry. I keep getting those mixed up.
Yeah, and I think the
But-
last time was basically a typo.
From what I got from the email, was that they had some typos in the document for SHPO, and they had some problems with the footers, talking footers and headers on a document. So it got sent back, and that's what they get another 30 days to look at. And it's so frustrating that you just can't move these things forward.
Loretta, what were the total project costs on these two?
On the bike ped, let's see. On the bike ped, we ended up having $488,438. That was NEPA design, construction, CEI, and then TDOT charges engineering services on the construction. So that was our total on the bike ped. Let's see. The town hall sidewalk total was $352,972. And again, we get 80%, and that only covered construction.
Right, so that's a little over $800,000 total for the
Yeah.
project costs. And the estimate from the engineer,
Original?
no. What they're now saying the projects are gonna cost.
I'm gonna say whatever it is 30% more. That's been pretty consistent. Is it more than that?
It ended up coming in around 2.2 million.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
That's
Really?
design.
They want over $300,000 just to do a design on a sidewalk.
Yeah, we need to rethink this, don't we?
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's also equally crazy to have a town of this quality where people have to walk in the streets, you know, if they want to. So it's something that we have to fix.
Right, and this is a way for us to fund these kinds of projects, you know, without using our paving money or whatever, general fund or whatever, but it's just gotten so out of control.
Is there anything from the Improve Act? Is there anything earmarked for that?
Just additional revenue that we would get
For
for
roads
straight
anyway.
street aid.
So there's nothing new about that.
I don't think there's any new,
I don't think so.
well, likely if there were funds generated for that, they would be available via grant projects.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because otherwise, we're just gonna get a little bit more from gas tax. I think we get minimal amount of an increase from that, but
I think it adds up to something around 25,000 for the year or something. It's not a substantial amount.
oh, Really the only question, I mean, the bottom line is I don't see how we can afford to do these projects with that kind of, and again, to me, the most frustrating thing is, you know, when we met with and I don't recall her name, and I hate to say the lady, but when we met with the lady from TDOT about these projects, you know, she said that they were seeing about $1 million a mile for sidewalk projects and all like this. So if you look at
right.
what we're talking about, and we've got a little over $800,000, we're pretty much in line with that.
Wow.
And then the next thing we know, we're being told 2.2 million.
That's construction and the, you know, NEPA design and CEI all combined.
So, going forward, as we're looking at the budget for next year, have we made a decision to pursue that grant? That's something that's in motion at this point, that the council would need to rescind?
I don't know if it requires what formal action it requires. I think we have the ability to decline moving forward with the process at any point.
And I'm not
But
saying
it-
we do
but
that
it's a-
tonight. I think we need to look at this. We've got to do something about our sidewalks. We have to do that. I mean, and it would be nice to do all the stuff we've talked about for the bike ped plan to get, you know, all the connectivity, but it seems like we've got to take care of what we have
That's
first.
the first major project we have is the Old Town sidewalk.
Yeah.
Which are definitely the more problematic ones
Right.
we have.
And it also brings us up to ADA compliance, doing the Old Town sidewalks. Those funds were approved because we're bringing those sidewalks to ADA compliance. So I just feel like we need to do those sidewalks.
So right now, the main question we have still hanging in the balance is the ability to roll these grant funds into that
Into
one.
that.
Just because with what we're seeing, we're anticipating issues there as well. So
And did you say that still might not be enough?
I don't know. Based on the engineered quotes that we got, we should be fine. But that's, like you said, we've been in NEPA for a year on that project.
So we haven't,
It's just, we have to solve this. We have to, I mean, our citizens expect a certain quality of life, and being able to walk on the sidewalks in front of your homes, that's a part of that. And we have to do that, but $2.2 million is ridiculous for sidewalks. I know if I replaced the sidewalks in front of my house, it would probably cost me about $600. You know, if I put the,
I feel like the Old Town sidewalk is a good project, and that's something we need to do. I really wanted to do that bike ped path on Taft Highway, but at this estimate, I just don't see how we can do it. And they were talking about putting a sidewalk in instead of the 10-foot bike ped first, you know, start out with a 5-foot sidewalk. When what we really wanted was a 10-foot bike ped path.
But the barge, didn't they say, basically it's a wash? Because the 10-foot wide bike ped path is a less expensive material than a 5-foot concrete sidewalk. So really, there's no savings in changing that, which is what TDOT had suggested as a cost-saving measure,
Right.
and then the engineer
Yes.
came back and said, no, that's not going to save you any money.
should we have the bike ped committee convene to talk about this news and maybe present an idea to the council? I mean, we got to get some different numbers. Right now, we don't know what it would cost if we decided to just fix our sidewalks, right?
Right.
And that seems like something that we would need to know. If we did it with our own equipment and we hired trucks to pour concrete and we did that.
Yes, we need to know that. I don't know if that ultimately changes the decision on this process or not.
No.
I mean, we don't have those kind of funds. We've done this to the point that we really don't have the funds to do it anymore. We've picked up the slack on these grant projects.
What
Pretty
kind of
much as
council
much as
action
we
do you
can.
need now on this?
I'm not sure.
I was hoping we would have an answer on using these funds for the Old Town sidewalk. Absent that, I think the council decision as to whether or not we'll pursue or decline these funds for these two
For the
new
other projects, right. Is it possible that we could have that answer by the next meeting?
If they can give us that much time.
They actually thought this meeting was on the 17th, so instead of the 8th for some reason.
Oh, so we might be okay.
So, yeah. And so what I need to do is talk to Lisa Dunn at TDOT and talk about rolling these funds over into Old Town Sidewalk. And we've also got to call into Melissa Taylor and Betsy at RPA to find out about any additional funds and their thoughts on rolling these projects together. But it's ultimately a TDOT decision. But they did say we could roll the Town Hall sidewalk and bike ped together, so that gives me hope that we could take these two projects and roll it into the Old Town sidewalk.
Well, let's pursue that.
Loretta, is it possible to do bike ped and asphalt versus concrete?
That's what our plan was.
Oh, was it? Okay.
But they say, but the engineer said it costs as much to do the asphalt bike ped because it's wider and you have to clear more area. So he used the same cost per linear foot for the 10-foot wide bike ped asphalt path to the 5-foot concrete sidewalk.
Thank you.
I thought that would help out because of the material, but it didn't. So that's what we need to look into, is asking TDOT if we can roll these two projects into our sidewalk, Old Town sidewalk. And then we're still waiting to hear back from regional planning about maybe additional funds and process for moving these funds over to another project.
Well,
So I need to-
if we can wait until the next meeting, I mean, I trust that everything that you guys have is accurate, so that's not why I'm saying this, but it's a shock.
Yeah.
It's a shock, but I mean, and if we knew for sure, it would be really hard to say, we're willing to spend $1 million a mile for a bike ped path here. I mean, I would have a hard time saying that we should do that, and that's not what we voted to do initially. That's significantly more. So,
In our conference call, they were talking about some options for us, combining the two projects, shortening up the bike ped, and blah, 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 because it was a significant overage
Right.
in the cost, but they wouldn't tell us what it was.
I asked, well, what exactly do you
What is
mean by significant? Well, maybe you should talk to the engineer about that. So,
So
maybe
we-
they're thinking you should just do it yourself and not have to go through this process.
I didn't know significant was going to be so significant.
Yeah, that's very significant.
So,
Anybody else have any thoughts on how we move forward on this? It's not, nobody wants to say, well, let's don't do our sidewalks.
I'd say we need to start learning how to lay forms.
Yes, it seems, yeah. All right. Before you sit down, I get emails on the LPRF grant, and Sam, maybe this is you. One came through recently that said they need the minutes from the planning commission meeting. The planning commission didn't approve the change to Marion Driver, did we?
we discussed it, and it's on the agenda for the next meeting, so we can go over it in more detail.
So that there is
And
something on the minutes.
then as soon as there's a draft set of minutes, we can send those in advance of approved minutes. So we did discuss it. They needed some more detail the scope of the project needs to be discussed in more detail with planning commission, so we have that for the next meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you, Loretta. Tentative agenda for the next meeting. It sounds like we'll be talking about sidewalks, for sure.
Oh, I'd like to get an update on the additional entrance to the middle high school.
When we get to other business.
I didn't know if there was something today or we could put it on the agenda. I mean,
Oh, you mean for next time, okay.
I'd like to put the goat ordinance on the itinerary agenda for
what did you say? The
for
goat?
second reading on the goat ordinance.
Okay.
Yes. Speak, Bob.
It's spring and people are gonna get goats, need to start looking at that now. And we've already had the first reading that carried, and I think it's time that we address the goat ordinance. I would like to add something to the discussion on the chicken ordinance also, for next time.
Llamas.
Not today.
So, goat ordinance on and chickens for discussion.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And update on the high school entrance. Okay.
No, there's other business.
Bob, you anticipate, can you let us know what your official dates are by the next meeting?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you said June 15th?
July.
July 15th.
July 15th.
All right. Bill, you have anything to add to the agenda?
No.
For next time?
We will have, obviously, second read on the water rate.
All right. Cockle-doodle-doo, we have any other business that anybody wants to bring up?
Now, you said the
That was bad.
website, is that through the website that's being redesigned, is that through our current supplier?
Yes.
Okay.
We got other business.
And then I had one question. I noticed the tracks being mounted on bolts on some concrete out there. Is that how they're gonna do it?
Yes.
So there's not gonna be wood or anything like that that are going,
You know, they're gonna be sitting on concrete, they call them cradles, footers, and then they fold the plate into the concrete and then lay the, track on that. It holds it into place and, you know, keeps it aligned. They can adjust that alignment.
so they'll make a second footer for the other track? Okay.
If I had thought on April Fool's Day, I would have said that it turns out there was a mistake in the grant. There's only one, they thought it's a monorail.
Oh, no.
There's only one out there now.
Given our most recent grant adventures, that wouldn't have been funny.
It would not have, yeah, it would have been funny. All right, anybody else have any other business to bring up tonight?
I do. Two things.
Go.
First one is, and I don't really know how to address this or approach it. The rec board has not met in almost a year. And I know I'm just the liaison, but I feel like things are really, really falling through the cracks. For example, we're in baseball season now, and it's been over 6 months that the baseball league said, hey, we have $15,000 to give us, the town, to put shades up, and they can't do it. They've got another project where they're donating clay to balance out the grass in the field, and I just don't understand why we can't get these projects done. Like, is that something like the rec board needs to meet, or I just want to have a discussion on it, because, I mean, we're April.
The clay was delivered and put down. There was absolutely no delay in that, except that when they put it down, they didn't turn it in with the existing dirt or anything. It was bad.
Okay.
And then we basically had to tell them they couldn't play on it in that condition. And then they got a bunch of folks in, and they improved it. Our guys have been working on it ever since to try to
Okay.
get back into
So
condition.
clay is Done.
Clay's done.
Okay,
The-
awesome. That
the-
happened recently, because this was only a week ago.
The shades,
Mhm.
they are supposed to be, Playcore acquired the company that they got to quote those. They're supposed to be on one of the national purchasing cooperatives.
Mhm.
We've been trying for, well, I was hoping the last meeting to have that information so we could make the purchase. We can't get the contract information from Playcore to tell us, so we don't have to bid those out. And that, it hasn't been 6 months on that,
Okay,
anywhere close to.
okay.
Just so you know.
Well, I mean, and I
that's-
would know that if the rec board had met, so that's kind of my point in bringing it up. Some of that is, I kind of wanted to get a clearer idea of what was going on. And then the second thing was, I think last year Chris had brought it up, and I think I was actually kind of against it, but I might be coming around. We talked about possibly giving the league, the baseball specifically, kind of like what we've done with the library, I think, kind of, we would still own it, but letting them kind of manage it so they're not having to come through us for everything. Is that a possibility?
It's
Or something we can talk about? Because I feel like
It's,
that's one organization that is like super energized to like do positive improvements, and I feel like we are the ones who hold them up. And I could be wrong, but that's my perception. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't have kids in that league anymore.
if you function in a non-governmental world, then you are going to think that we are holding you up. Because we can't do things the way they would do it. We can't just go out and buy things. If they're over $10,000, we either have to bid them out,
I do know that.
spec them, bid them out, take all that time, or if they're part of a purchasing cooperative, a nationwide co-op, we can buy them that way, and that's what we've been trying to do. But even at that, you're talking about weeks, not months, but
Right.
weeks just to try to get the information we need to make the purchase. So they feel like we're holding them up, but we are moving forward with the projects as best we can.
Because we're having to go through a governmental agency. That's my, kind of my point. Is there a way around that to where we can kind of give them, so
Well,
it's not
in-
having to come, is that how, do I have it wrong, how we do the library? Because I feel like we've
The-
done
the-
something to give the library a
Library
little
was
more
state
autonomy.
mandated. That was state mandated.
That was a state
Yeah.
thing, okay.
Now, in reality, including the baseball, softball's already walked away. They came in, laid the cash box and checkbook down and said, we're done. Football, basketball, all the leagues we've talked to, and there are people running some of the leagues that don't even have kids in them anymore because nobody else wants to do it. So what we're looking at is really just the opposite. They're generating funds. They have money in the bank, and they say, well, we'll give you this money if you'll do this project, and we have to do the project the way we have to do it. Well, if they're generating those funds, we could do the same thing. So we're actually looking at the prospect of taking the leagues in-house so that those league fees come to the town, and the town would have the funds to do these projects ourselves.
Okay.
So we can manage it start to finish. So that's the really kind of opposite, but exact same end we're working to. Where those
Yeah,
things are
like I
better.
said, like I'm not real concerned about how we get to it. It just seems like there's a lot of stumbling blocks, even when my
Sure.
kids were in the league and we were trying to do things, and I can appreciate what you're saying about it being governmental, so that's why I was trying to think, is there another way that we can kind of sidestep?
So, but to where you began with the rec league having not met for a while, and this is not a criticism at all, but that's part of the things, one of the things I think we need to get established on a regular basis is our committees need to meet whether or not they think they should, so that we don't get into situations where people's heads are on fire, so that we're talking about problems along the way. And because the rec department, well, I guess the rec department is a town department. So Amy could call those meetings as the liaison and say, we're going to meet. You can call those meetings and make them happen, and then bring agenda items to them. And it would probably be good if this discussion that we just had here happened there.
Well, and that's also why I brought it up. I didn't know that, I thought as a liaison, since I'm not a voting member, I just kind of am there for a resource, but Jared is the one who calls the meetings. Do I have that wrong too?
Well,
I'm just learning all kinds of
you
stuff.
can, you know, those boards serve they're there for
To support the council.
support, the council appoints them. So if, as a council member, if you feel a need for that board to meet, I don't see why you
Alright.
can't do that.
I will call a meeting.
I've been trying to set up a meeting with the personnel committee, so it's not as simple as calling a meeting.
I got you.
There are difficulties sometimes, but you can certainly initiate
Okay.
that. You know, and again, just to kind of explain a little further, the batting cage was not one we had
Mhm.
last year. And again, it's much appreciated. We've got a batting cage. They bought the batting cages and we got the slab poured for it and all. It was a good cooperative effort, but that was something that wasn't even on our radar. Wasn't in the budget. So there's a whole process that you have to go through before you can even start a project like that.
Right, and it would be nice going into the budgeting process if there are things like that that are potentially on the horizon for next year that you got from the rec committee and brought to the budget meetings.
Yeah, to further discuss that, the second set of bleachers for the smaller ball field would be in order, and those are, I don't know what they cost, but I would think that would be a small amount of money to have a second set of bleachers for the one on Timberlinks, that the smaller ball field, it only has one set, that they've now just put it behind the batting cage, whereas it seems like the other ones where you have two different teams they could sit in. And I would think that would be something that would be easily budgeted for something for your
Yeah.
list.
So should those like the thing that Bob just brought up, because I'm out there every weekend too, it looks as if you might be able to take one of the bleachers, none of them are in great shape, but one of the bleachers from facing the ball fields and move it over to
Which
that
field are you
side.
talking about?
The
You're talking
Timberlinks
about
field,
Timberlinks,
same
okay.
thing. But I don't think those are things council ought to be discussing. Those are things the rec committee ought to be discussing, right? And that's a reason for that to meet on a regular basis. Am I wrong?
That's correct.
How granular do you want the council to be? You don't want to answer that, do you?
Not really. Council can, Bob suggested
Cover.
I just went blank on the name, the CPR mechanisms for trail rescues and, you know, there's nothing wrong with council making recommendations on facility improvements and all like that. There's nothing wrong. I don't see that as being really granular. That was my
Okay.
hesitation. It doesn't mean we're gonna be able to do those things, but if you see an improvement that you feel is necessary, then that's certainly within
Sure.
your purview to bring
Yeah, I
into
think it's
discussion.
important to bring it up, because like the chief, Mitchell had agreed that it was a good item to put in his budget, the Lucas machine. So, I think it doesn't hurt to talk about it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
let's be granular.
Yeah, but I would still like to hear what the committee that focuses on this, as they look at facilities in general, you know, how this stuff fits in with the overall picture. And I'm not talking about the Lucas machines, I'm talking about like that issue with the smaller field at Timberlinks. Yeah.
But somebody usually brings it up as a
No,
matter
no,
of
right.
discussion, and so it doesn't seem to hurt to do that.
No harm, no foul.
I had one other question. And this is truly just an education thing. So there was an article in the paper a couple days ago about Food City possibly coming to Walden. And, you know, we had a lot of discussion about the Keith Corp and that area in the back rezoning. Where does that stand now? We voted against it, but what happens to that? Were you just waiting for them to come to us and propose something?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there a time limit on that? Like,
They can't come back with a proposal, a like proposal for a year.
okay, that's kind of what I was wondering.
but-
So
You know,
in a year, they can come back and propose whatever they would propose.
Right.
Okay. curious.
Since you brought that one up, this one isn't about the hours, but as that discussion continues, that's Walden, that's not us. However, the impact of a large grocery store could affect if they try to tie into our sewer system, if WWTA were to allow them to run the lines to tie in, could increase, in my opinion, not being an expert, but could increase how long our moratorium stands. So I'd like to know an answer to that. And then, or, see what I'm saying? Because our issue is capacity. And if a large facility like that tapped into this, that would affect our capacity as a town. So you're on the WWTA board, it'd be great to keep a close eye on that and find out. If I'm wrong, could be.
I think the main issue would be the likelihood that they would be able to.
Right, they'd have to lay
That's
a
what
lot
I
of
was
pipe.
gonna ask,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, and so then if they don't, and they approve it, which they may not, then they're gonna have some sort of a lagoon or a septic system that takes place behind it, and that also would potentially impact Middle Creek, which is already one of our affected creeks. And so I think even though we don't get a say in this, that thing affects our lives. This potentially affects our situation as well. I mean, with the creeks that are listed that flow through our community. So I'm anxious to know how the runoff and how all that's going to be dealt with. So where I don't feel we ought to, especially in our position as council members, ought to be standing up and speaking at the meetings. There are a lot of questions that we need to know that actually can impact us, in my opinion. Law enforcement, knowing how often we do, it's not called courtesy, what's it called, Boyd?
Mutual aid?
Where we do mutual aid within Walden. If you have another grocery, our officers do
Yeah.
mutual aid.
But why would a grocery store impact?
Because you're going to tend to have more traffic accidents where you have more commercial stuff. You tend to have, a slight rise in crime. I'm not talking about anything crazy, but it's just another thing that would happen on Walden's Ridge that potentially impacts our services as well and the services we provide. So I think we need to watch it. All of us need to watch it for those reasons. Just that all may be fine, but
But the thing I'm gonna be
Can we?
watching is the additional revenue the town of Walden might derive from that.
Exactly.
We could have benefited from. That's another thing that I would like to watch to see how that works out.
Exactly.
certainly taxes come in. But I mean, we could revisit that whole issue. Everyone voted. Our issue here was a land use issue, and it was changing from residential to commercial. The most extreme thing. That's different than their situation.
I find it ironic that the same individuals also annexed to make our town bigger, which then means we need a corresponding additional consideration for businesses as far as expanding some of that. At least it's a discussion point.
Yeah.
Harry, to Dan's point, is that something we can even legally, I just tiptoe around that because you can't vote on what's being put in there, a big box. You can only vote
Yeah,
on so is that something, is there any legal ramifications that we need to be aware of?
Well, Signal Mountain doesn't have the say-so in what's put in out of Walden. Now, if it affects Signal Mountain services in some way, perhaps, but I don't see how we could get there. But I haven't thought much about it either.
And it may get turned down.
And
in
we don't know.
We don't know what's going to happen, and it may go out to the county, so somebody might benefit from it.
Someone's benefiting from it for sure. I think we said that right before we voted. It was coming anyway.
All right. Anything else? Meeting adjourned.